Good morning, everybody. Glad to be back with you this first Saturday in August. My name is Ed Samuel. I'm a career coach with a firm called Sam Nova. We're based in Kennett Square, PA, and serve clients in the greater Philadelphia area and across the U.S. You know, this is such an unusual time, and I hope and pray that you and your family are safe and well. You know, I continue to see signs that things are coming back. And you know, and in the form of job postings and people literally landing jobs, and it's across many industries. So I hope that whole trend continues. Personally, in our company, I've had 3 clients land jobs in the last 2 weeks alone. 2 of those clients were what you call career pivots. They were leaving what they've been doing a long time and shifting into a new career area. So that was pretty exciting for 2 of them, and certainly the third person who stayed in their line of work, they landed a job. But you know, it's interesting. Everything that they did and everything that they were taught and that we teach at my firm and what I speak about often, it has to do with networking. You know, last week I was honored to speak to Wharton University alumni. And included in that audience was quite a few people from Temple's Fox School of Business alumni. And I was asked to speak on the topic of networking, especially in the midst of COVID-19. And I literally spoke for about an hour and 24 minutes to a very large audience, really across the U.S. And that audience was a wide mix of people, everyone from recent grads from the University of Penn and Wharton to people who are 30-year industry veterans, to PhDs, to government employees, to entrepreneurs, consultants. It was such a great cross mix of people. And many of them, almost all of them that I just described, have reached out to me to talk to me after my talk last week to learn more about networking and to have a further dialogue. Now, this topic of networking, you know, what I tried to hit on and what I'm going to hit on this morning are, you know, what is networking and where do I fall? And I kind of divided into very specific groups, and then I went very deep into how to what to really avoid. And I'm going to talk about 6 areas to avoid or to do. And if I could throw in a 7th, if I have time, I'll certainly do that as well. Now, it just happens that my next book coming out this fall is on networking. My first book was Optimizing Your Resume, and that's already out and available at our website, by the way. But my next book is on networking because of all the things I've talked to and to all the audiences, to all the training programs, whether it be 1 hour, 2 hour, whether it be virtual calls, networking has always been in the top 3. And for a good reason, because it's really the lifeblood of managing your career success. And if you can do networking well, there's so much good can come of it. So I'm going to start off with talking about networking in this way. I'm going to talk about 4 different categories of where people could be related to networking. And I'm not going to go into it in great depth, but I'm just going to hit on some highlights. And I call this networking to the 4th power. But the first power of networking is you might be a minimal networker. And that means you might have a few friends, a boss. Maybe you work for one firm your whole life, your whole business career, but it tends to be organizationally centric. It tends to be boss centric. It might be, you know, less than 100 people that you might know. Sometimes it's even less than that, and it might even include a client or 2. But you're a minimal networker, and I call that, you know, networking to the first power, so to speak. And some people go through, you know, their whole career as a minimal networker, and that's okay. And they end their career as a minimal networker. But what happens is that if you lose your job, or if you really want to grow your business, or if you really want to get found by more people, a minimal networker approach is not necessarily ideal in any way, shape, or form. And then what happens is that, you might move to kind of this next level of networking, which I'll call the networking to the second power. And that's where you become an average networker. Now, average network, what does that really mean? That means, you start to connect with people outside of what your day in job is at your company. You might even attend an external forum. It could be industry specific. It could be, something completely related to a volunteer work that you're doing. But the point is, and you might even occasionally be helping other people now, but you're starting to connect with people outside of your firm, that organizational centric role that you do. And now these people that become average networkers, my rule of thumb is they could have anywhere between 101 to 500 connections on LinkedIn as in a formal way, but they're networking a lot more than what they used to do. And then what happens is that, average networkers could get even better, and they could grow to something that I call the third power of networking, where you become a strong networker. And a strong networker is something a little bit different now. That means you're probably involved in maybe up to 5+ different types of organizations or forums. Could be the chamber, could be career professionals executive networking group. It could be the financial executive networking group. It could be the Irish Business Association in New York that I had the pleasure of speaking to a month and a half ago or so. But it could be really other groups that that you're now actively involved in a much more robust way. You start to get really good at helping more people than just an occasional person. You make it more of a habit than not in helping people as much as you can, because you're involved in more forms. But you're starting to build an inner circle around you, people that, kind of a go-to type of audience around you. You might even be building one or two strategic partners where you actually start to really focus on a win-win, maybe with one or two people. And you're certainly actively connecting with people a lot more, a whole lot more. And, people that become strong networkers, you're somewhere between 501 connections and possibly 3,000 connections formally on LinkedIn. So you could be a strong networker. Maybe you're listening today, you consider yourself a strong networker. And then you could gravitate to, another level of networking, which I call networking to the fourth power, which is becoming a rainmaker. Rainmakers are different. I've run into several of them in my life, and it's fairly amazing when I do. Rainmakers are involved in 10+ forms, organizations. They may have up to seven strategic partners. They start to become subject matter experts, thought leaders. Their inner circle is not just a couple of people. Their inner circle tends to be up to 10, even up to 15 people. And what happens with a rainmaker is that their value of who they are and what they bring to the table, it actually starts to transcend what they actually sell or do. People come to them because they can solve problems or connect them to other people. Rainmakers also tend to really bring fearlessness to a whole different planet. They don't care who doors they knock on. Cold calling, they laugh at cold calling in terms of it, being something that, that they should be afraid of, or rejection means nothing to them, because they also know that for every 100 phone calls, they all need, one person answers that phone, and everything in your life can be different. Now, rainmakers, typically you're looking at 10,000+ connections. And so, I want to just talk about this for a minute, because you listening could be a minimal networker. Because you've worked with one company for 20 years, there's no reason to build a network. But I will tell you this unequivocally, and we've helped well over 700 clients to date, my team. in my company. And of those 700 plus clients, I will promise you that if you lost your job tomorrow and you weren't good at networking, you landing another job is infinitely harder. And if you're an average networker and you lost your job, you getting back to work is a whole lot easier. And if you're a strong networker and you lost your job, even easier. And if you're a rainmaker, chances are it's the easiest way to get back to work because you have a lot of people there to help you. Now, it doesn't always work that way, but this whole progression really depends on where you're at in life. And sometimes you could be a strong networker and then you land the job and you go back to be an average networker. I often worry about people who go back to work, they land the job, and they go from strong networker to average networker, and then they become a minimal networker again because they go all in with the company to such an extent that they really create, they go through life again, and they're in the same way that they started. They just stop networking, and a lot of things can change 5 years later, 10 years later, if they were to lose their job again. But networking applies, and some of the things I'm going to talk about next apply to people in their careers, but it also applies to consultants. It also applies to people in corporate America, in the government, or any place that you're selling, even people who are raising funds. There are some rules around networking. So I'm going to shift a bit now to some things to do or not to do when it comes to networking. I call them, hey, here are the big 6 do's and don'ts. And again, if I have time here, I'll throw in a 7th. So here's the first one. It has to do with a rule that I call the 90% rule of networking. And this is a fundamental rule that if you don't get your head around it, it really limits your ability to network. And this is what it means. It means that whatever you want to do, whether it's find a job and have somebody help you, 90% of the time, the people that you know directly, whether you know them, outside of work, inside of work, whether you're connected to them on LinkedIn or not, 90% of the time, these people will never help you directly get your next job or to buy your next thing you're selling. See, but 10% maybe, yes. 10% of the time they'll help you, but not 90% of the time. See, 90% of the time, the people that are going to help you are the people those 10% know. So the problem and the challenge with networking sometimes is we put, 10 people around us that we just love and know, and we say, hey, those people are going to help me if I need help. They're going to hire me. They're going to get me to the person, or buy my product or my service, right? And in reality, what happens is that those 10 people, 10% of the time they might, but 90% of the time, it's who they know. And the next level knows that will help you get that next job, leverage that next item, make that next sale. So where networking goes wrong is that people will say, well, hey, Ed, I'm only going to connect with formally these 10 people. Well, I'm going to connect with another 5, maybe. I'll connect with 50, maybe. And what happens is that's good. You're building a network. But remember, the larger your network, the more people they know. And that 90% just grows exponentially. So if you talk to somebody, and this has happened many a times where someone will meet with, hey, Ed, I have 50 people I'm connected to. And I've had a cup of coffee with every one of those people. I know all of them. And then what happens is that, yep, you're right. But remember, only 10% of the time they're going to be able to help you. it's who they know. Then I'll meet someone else who has 2,000 people that they're connected to. And yep, 10% of them might help them in some way directly. But the other 90% are there to help them now too. Their network has grown exponentially, and now they're going to leverage more because of this 90% rule of networking. So many times what happens is if you don't agree to this 90% rule of networking, you get kind of sucked into this notion, well, I'm not going to connect with Ed Samuel. I know I met him at a networking event, but I'm not going to connect with Ed because Ed probably won't be buying my product. He won't be able to get me my next job. Ed's not a chemist. He's not going to be able to help me. And they're probably right. But where the mistake is made, they don't connect with me because I'm not going to solve their problem directly. What they're missing is that Ed's connected to, believe it or not, well over 100 R&D chemistry leaders across the country. Now, if that person connected with me, they would never know that I'm connected to that many people that they now have access to. Just think about it. You could apply this really to every industry, to every category, to every line of thinking. So my argument would be, wow, if you meet somebody, you never know who they're connected to, and who they're connected to 90% of the time is going to be able to help you. So again, I think the mistake made with me personally. I have 23,500 connections as of 2 days ago. When I go to a meeting, I'm on a virtual call, and then people don't follow up and connect with me. I just kind of scratch my head, but I scratch my head knowing that they don't buy into the 90% rule of networking. So hopefully that you get what I'm explaining, and be very careful that you don't limit your thinking to that 10% that's only going to help you as you build your network out. Now, here's the second rule. When you go and you build the network really with everybody that you know. And again, mistakes made all the time here. There's, let's just put your groups of people that everyone knows into two buckets. One bucket is people that you work with. And then, in terms of where you get income, it's a job, people you work with. And then there's people outside of work that you know. And, these people fall into categories, right? They become your best buds, your best friends, your go-to people. It's a beautiful thing. Or they become co-workers of some sort. In other words, they've worked with you in some capacity. Or they become acquaintances. These are people that know you, you know them, but you never really worked with them. My argument to you is you should be connected with all of them formally on LinkedIn. And that's assuming they are on LinkedIn. And if they're not on LinkedIn, you can still leverage them, use them, talk to them about who they know. But LinkedIn gives it such an amazing, greater ability to connect with people formally. Because then you get to see who they're connected to, right? Now, when you build out this formal network, it takes some work to do. Many times what will happen, though, is that, I'll meet with a leader and I'll look, how many connections do you have? Well, I have 15. I'll say, well, 15 people just in the 100 square foot of where you're sitting in your building. Your plant's got 100 people. And 75% of them, if not 90% of them, and they're all on LinkedIn, but you're only connected to 15. And if you went to your church or mosque or synagogue, guess what? You're connected, another 100 people, but they all may be acquaintances. And guess what? 80% of them are on LinkedIn. Connect with all of them. Build your formal network using that 90% rule of networking. Okay, here's number 3. Be strategic when you engage your network. This is a mistake that's made all the time. I see people taking their networks and dumping them upside down in a big pot and stirring it, and everything's the same. And my argument would be very careful when you're using your network. I see countless examples of where everyone's trying to get a warm lead, get some help, which is great, but don't ask someone to do something that they can't do for you. So, for example, if you wanted to reach the CFO of the company, but you knew somebody, in the purchasing department, well, yeah, you're asking them for help, but that might be the wrong person to send, your resume to the CFO. They may not even be comfortable doing that for you. But let's say they do it for you. They have no relationship with the CFO. And then the CFO gets it and says, well, that's nice, but maybe they don't even read it because there's not a relationship there. Many times people will leverage their network and say, hey, can you help me? And they'll take someone's resume and send it to HR. Well, heck, you could have done that yourself, send it to HR. But the other thing that you want to do is just be smart about it. When you're doing something strategically, you also have to focus on quality and not make mistakes. If you're not even remotely a fit for a job, and you ask somebody who's pretty senior to present you to someone that they know at a company, and you're not even a remote fit for the job, and you gave that person no warning, the person that you're leveraging to go help you goes and says, hey, here's this great person that you want to take a look at. And then they look at the resume and they find this person's not even remotely a fit for a job. And then what happens is that, that person looks at your person that you've asked for help and say, hey, are you crazy? I'm looking for this and you're giving me this. So what happens then is it gets worse, because the next time you go to leverage that very person at that company, they're less likely to help you because you embarrassed them, number one, and number two, you weren't strategic about it. So this whole issue of think about different people have different roles in your network and use their strengths, not necessarily their weaknesses, as they go to help you. Much longer discussion, and it's going to be one long chapter in my book that I'm writing. Now, here's the fourth one. Don't be afraid of what I call intrinsic networkers. These are people that build networks, and they're willing to share their network with you, but they may not know you. A lot of times on LinkedIn, they might refer themselves as Lions, LinkedIn open networkers. But don't be afraid to say yes and connect with them. And the reason for that, these are people that have grown networks because they know their networking is more important than the bosses they work for, even in their corporate company. Because let's face it, if you get laid off, after a couple of months, your company just forgets about you as a rule completely. And the only thing you have to rely on are your buds and your network, and a lot of prayer to get you back to work. Now, when people like intrinsic networkers are trying to add value into your life, and many times they try to connect with you, 95% of the time, my feeling is connect with them as quickly as you can, because what they're giving you most of the time is way more than you're giving them. Most intrinsic networkers, open networkers, sometimes they're called, will give you 5,000, 10,000 connections. And what do you have? You have 400 connections. And again, if you use the 90% rule of networking, you don't know who they're connected to. And that can then build your base. You have more to leverage. But I see the mistake made all the time. I'm not going to connect with him or her because, I don't know who they are. And I want to have a cup of coffee with the people I know. That's why everything kind of always goes back to the 90% rule of networking. Here's number 5. When it comes to networking, it's okay to build strategic relationships. The only thought I want to share this morning is I want you to be careful. do one thing with a person and then really figure out if it's really strategic or not. And if you could do one thing together well, then build on that strategic relationship. But when I talk about a strategic relationship, I'm talking about a win-win. I'm talking about something where everyone's giving and it starts to grow and blossom. And it can be such a beautiful thing in a relationship. But it starts with networking, because if you don't network with somebody who you may not know, you don't know if they could become a strategic partner for you to then bring you to a whole different planet, a whole different level of success. So you might run into somebody, you might have a dialogue, you might lead to something. But the one thing I will caution you is be careful, start very slow. And I do recommend, and this is a whole separate discussion. There's two types, there's a lot of types out there, but one of them is takers. One of them are givers. And I hate people who want to build themselves up as strategic networkers or partners when in fact they're just takers. And takers are okay. But I'm much more okay when a taker calls himself a taker, but don't profess to build a strategic relationship, and all you're doing is a take transaction. And I could go through that maybe on a different program down the line. And then here's number 6. Number 6 is make sure each week or each month, ideally weekly, monthly at the minimum, meet new people in your life, in your walk. Go join a group, volunteer group, industry group, networking group. If you don't have a group, go to my website and look for a drop down called networking groups. I have a really good list of 12 or 15 networking groups in the Philadelphia area, and some of them are national, by the way, for those listeners outside the area. And join one. And if you can't find one, call me up, send me an email, and I'll find one for you. But the whole point of joining these groups is to meet new people, connect with them, build your relationship, expand your network. Hey, these are the first 6 do's and don'ts. I hope you found them helpful. And we're just about out of time. So, for those new to the program, I did publish my first book called Optimize Your Resume, Do's and Don'ts, the Sam Nova Way. It's available now on our website for $20, inclusive of shipping. Just, go to our website, www.samnovainc.com, SAMNOVAINC.com. 350 positive comments about the book to date. Practical, no fluff, useful. Now, it just happens next week. I'm co-hosting this next Tuesday, I think it's August 4th and 5th, a LinkedIn interactive workshop followed by a personalized one-on-one consulting session with my partner and friend, Brooke Miles from Delaware Shoutout. This will be our 3rd session. To learn more, go to my LinkedIn page. And again, you can type in LinkedIn, Ed Samuel Career Coach. I'll come up number 1 on Google. Click on my LinkedIn profile and take a look at my most recent 2 or 3 posts, and you'll see where that workshop is. And there's a link there. You can click on it. We never had one person to date, and we've had a lot of people attend, say it was not worth every single penny. And we're discounting it 75% to get as many people in as possible. I'll also be speaking at multiple venues in August. And again, if you connect with me on LinkedIn or just look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see some of my upcoming speaking engagements. So please join me on the next Optimize Your Career program. We'll be speaking again this on Saturday, August 15th at 8 a.m. I plan to have an amazing guest talk to us about dramatic shift we're making in this new virtual world that we live in, and how do we optimize that virtual world. So I think you'll find it exciting. So this is Ed Samuel, Career Coach with Sam Nova. Our website again is www.samnovainc.com. If you'd like to reach me with a question or comment, email me at esamuel@samnovainc.com or call our main number at 610-274-8214. Make it a great weekend, and God bless.